What you're asking for is the 50,000 in the first year, so we can do a feasibility study and follow through with that larger amount in a year 2 timeframe.
Yes, subject to the feasibility study, and of course the council has determined what it wants to do with the Summerhay Street side. We're not asking the council to fund that without getting the proceeds from that side.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Phil. That completes your submission. Your issues will be deliberated on by the council shortly. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have submission number 665, Ros Hallam. Thank you, Ros. I'll just remind you that if you want to have questions asked, reserve a bit of time at the other end. Thank you.
Thank you. Kia ora koutou, ko Ros Hallam aho. I've got 2 submissions, Mr Chair. Okay, right. First one is submission 615/3 regarding the establishment of a seniors reference group. My husband spoke briefly to it the other day, but I was going to be the main speaker. The Council's already set a precedence regarding successful collaboration with sector groups. The Youth Council's been the voice for young people in the city for a number of years, and the Disability Reference Group, also another one, came from a need in the Council to understand and cater for better inclusion of people with wide-ranging disabilities in the cityscape. It's now time for a seniors reference group in Palmerston North. The city's older people need a voice and need to be heard and catered for. You heard Emma talk about some of the concerns just before. We're a significant and growing group in Palmerston North, ranging from the young at heart and active over 60s to the less mobile, some less mobile, 90s plus. We've also got to prepare for the ones who are coming after us, who will fit these categories eventually. The City Council understands the age-friendly city principles, but a true age-friendly city requires meaningful liaison, consultation and collaboration with its older stakeholders. A seniors reference group would assist with the planning of social housing, things like social housing, transport initiatives, streetscapes, new parks, events, etc. A seniors reference group would actually be quite easy to set up. Representatives would be seniors from the city with appropriate skills. The Age-Friendly Palmerston North Trust would be the perfect organisation to act as its managing body. A seniors reference group would be would be helpful in creating a more positive and understanding attitude towards the elderly. This has already happened with those 2 groups that I mentioned before, far more understanding of their needs. It is the right thing to do. We look forward to some imminent interaction with the Council about this initiative. So thank you for that one. That's number 1. Number 2, that one was an individual thing. Submission. This one, I'm speaking on behalf of Age-Friendly Palmerston North. At a council meeting earlier this year, I'm sure I heard a council employer telling those present that 90% of Palmerston North footpaths were up to standard. Those of us who walk in the older suburban footpaths of parts of Awapuni, Takaro, Hokowhitu and Highbury would certainly disagree with him. The quality of many of our streets is a disgrace and certainly quite unusable for the use of many older people. We wonder what minimum standards are for our footpaths. Do they include lopsided camber, protruding tree roots, cracks, ruts, uneven edges, etc., etc.? Now, we believe that this topic has been brought up with every councillor here, and you're probably sick of hearing about it, and I can even see the eye rolls. I can believe the eye rolls are there. Probably work on the streets is being done, but because we don't see the whole picture, public perception is that the council is ineffective in that area. So Age Friendly has a very proactive and positive suggestion. Maybe you're doing it already, I don't know, but I certainly haven't seen it. This suggestion would help to alleviate ratepayers' dissatisfaction to a certain extent. Number one, tell the public what the expected standards for footpaths are. Number two, each year establish a plan for the public. Establish a plan for the public which streets are to have footpath improvements. Let us know. And number three, twice a year, publish a short progress report letting the public know successes and concerns. If you already do this, it gets lost somewhere in the system. And number four, in the same way you consult with cyclists, please consult with footpath users if there are perennial problems which need addressing, e.g. tree roots. I know that's the first thing everybody's going to say. But there are people out in the community who are willing to be consulted with. As members of Age Friendly Palmerston North, which part of its duty is to advocate for positive ageing, we would like to see older people making full use of our suburban footpaths. At present, they are often unsafe. The City Council has gone to huge lengths to make Palmy city friendly. Let's now be fair and make it pedestrian friendly. Ngā mihi, kia ora. Questions?
Thank you very much for your submission. We have questions from Councillor Johnson.
Sorry, I was in the queue for the last speaker. I haven't got a question for Ross, sorry.
Oh,
Well, Ross has already spoken to me about this before the submission, so I feel I'm well informed. I'll let others ask questions.
anyone else?
A question from Councillor Brent Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Ross, for bringing these matters to us. Just around the footpaths, I guess what strikes me is that perhaps we're measuring the wrong thing or we're reporting on the wrong thing if it's sort of a physical, how much the footpath is okay or not okay. And so would you be comfortable with advocating for some sort of satisfaction, community satisfaction measure to go alongside that to track actually how happy people are with their experience on the footpath?
Would that be helpful to you people? It certainly would be to us, I would think. Yeah. But just because they've got a rating of satisfied or dissatisfied or whatever, there has to be a program somewhere that we can see to show that things are being done, things are being planned, things are being done, and maybe things might have to be gone back to.
Yeah, thank you. Those points were certainly clear. I was just interested around, what we might measure to actually see that we're making progress with the community, and I think I've heard your answer there, so thank you.
You might need to look at those blinking tree roots, though. Sorry, you might be in for a fight with some people.
Noted, thank you.
A question from the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Rutherford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Ros, for your personal submission and your submission from Age Friendly. And appreciate the feedback, particularly around the footpath comments, because I think a lot of that we probably are doing, but perhaps our communication isn't the best. All good. So that's useful. I've got a question on the written age-friendly submission. So under the point 1, goal 3, connected and safe community, there's a recommendation that have you got it in front of you so you know what I'm talking about, or I can just read it out?
Read it out quickly.
Okay, so it says, we recommend that PNCC considers the physical, social and wellbeing needs of older people when building social housing stock. So I just wanted to understand whether you feel that this isn't currently happening or whether it's just a reminder that those are needs that need to be considered.
As far as I'm aware, I think it is happening now, but it's just mindful to keep it in mind, and if there's new buildings of a different sort, if there's housing of a special sort, maybe, I don't know, in the future you might like to look at things like cooperative housing or collaborative housing, those sorts of things, different kinds of housing. We certainly want to be at the table for that, please.
Thank you. And then just my next question was, when you're recommending that the PNCC continues adding to its housing stock in the city, and I think perhaps Councillor Barrett asked this on Tuesday, I'm not sure whether you were here for other submissions, have you got an idea of how many we should be building, or, you know, there's money in the plan, but is it sufficient? Where do you think we aim for?
I think you aim for as much as we can afford, because it's going to be a huge problem in the future, not just now, but in the future as well. I'm thinking of all these young people that are coming up who are unemployed right now and eventually will need rental housing or whatever. So look at rentals. Sorry. I actually wasn't prepared to speak to that today, but which is why I'm not giving you very good answers.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
So, but you're suggesting that we don't just look at social housing, we're looking at building rentals.
I think you look at rentals, you've got to, I think.
Thank you for your comments.
A question from Councillor Vaughan Dennison.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ros. Just in regards to the suggestion of a senior reference group, can I understand if you put some thought on what sort of representation that group should have, and maybe the terms of reference, how broad it should be?
I think it should be reasonably broad. So, you know, the people on the committee could be from a wide range of elderly people. They need to be seniors. I think people have been there and done it. Yeah, I think it needs to have good representation. I don't know, we hadn't really thought too much about it yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Happy for the suggestion. Thank you for your thoughts.
But we would, can I answer that? Yeah. We would actually like, I think it should be managed by, not necessarily by the council. I think it should be managed by another group, and Age Friendly Palmerston North is sitting there ready to do it, probably.
Thank you very much for your submission, Ros, and that completes it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for the opportunity, people.
I'll now call on Mr. Malcolm Frith, submitter or submission number 667.
Good afternoon. My name is Malcolm Frith. I was submitting on this is my own submission. I'm speaking on my own behalf. So I'd like to thank the Council for the opportunity to speak today, and thank you, Mr. Chair. There's an old saying, take care of the small things and the big things will take care of themselves. In other words, if you deal with a whole lot of little things, the big things will form. An example of this is actually why we're here today, meaningful consultation. And it was interesting to hear the last submitter's points on this, and I fully agreed with her points. The Council has been very woeful in its consultation recently, the last 25 to 30 years, in my opinion. That is why, when it comes to election time, you have such an appalling turnout from the citizens who bother to vote or don't bother to vote. Because the people I talk to are very disconnected from this council. They moan to me because they know that I like to speak about the council, and they tell me how they feel about it. And to be quite honest, a lot of them think the place sucks. Changing a brand, which is what the city has recently done, is another good example. Where was the consultation on this? Who was asked, what should we call ourselves? But just changing a brand or a name of a place does not change the attitude or how things are carried out and done. And again, a reflection back to the last submitter. Footpaths, 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 since I've sat here listening to other people, has been the hot topic for many, many years. And again, I fully agree with her points. So if the little things are addressed and the big things take care of themselves, what a change we would see in this city. People would most probably stop complaining about how things are done here. Now, a good example of this would be if you were to travel up Tremaine Avenue to the Gold Service Station as you approach the Gold Service Station, there's a left-hand turn. But that left-hand turn is too narrow for all the truck drivers and trucks that trundle up and down that road. So they run over the curb, and there's a nice big fat rut in the ground there. And it's been like that for years. So what do all those truck drivers do? They say, that bloody council, can't they fix this road? And then they go and tell all their other mates about it. That is a reflection on the city, and a woeful one. They then travel round in Terraria Road. What a disgusting state that road is in. And they tell all their mates about it. What a poor example we set. Again, in this city, there's a lot of unfinished projects around. And I was very disappointed to read that some of these projects again have been pushed out, particularly around roading. I remember when Councillor, his name's just popped out of my head, he passed away recently, came back into the council, and he moaned that the ring road had never been finished in his absence of about 15 years. And it still remains unfinished. Ferguson Street, I believe, relied on some funding from the Roading Authority, and so it still remains unfinished. So when people come to Palmerston North, they see this continual picture of unfinished things here. And they say, man, Palmy's a bit of a joke. So wouldn't it be great to actually see some of these things finished? For example, James Line. Now, I've been working for a friend up there for a few years now, and the top end of James Line, Calvin Grove, according to the funding, yet again has been pushed out to 2025. This was a project that dated back to the year 2000. The neighbour directly next door gave me a document produced by the council showing the road's upgrade to the standard set for a city road, and it was going to be done that year. So the council staff member told him. And now it's been pushed out to 2025. Now that road is continually patched up at that stage by Higgins, because it gets rutted out along the edge with all the big massive trucks that come along and all the cars that zoom up and down there. There's not even any proper traffic management in that whole area. So you've been spending a lot of money on big projects. And okay, that may be a fair thing, but if you had cut $2 million off the current arena upgrade, that would have funded the portion of James Line that needs upgrading. I think we're trying to set a too high a bar for this city as far as how we spend the money that the ratepayers contribute to it. We're forgetting all the unfinished projects and going for the big shiny new toys. And to be quite honest, as I say, they're nice, but then you look at all the comments about the new section of roading on the other side of the square to here. Again, another indication of where the city's going wrong. This is different to everything else that's been done around the square so far. And because it's different, it's cost us more. Why couldn't it have been the same as this portion of the square roading with the trees in the middle? Now, it was interesting to see they stuck the trees back next to the shops again, and yet that was a major issue up Broadway Avenue. There's a major problem here in Palmerston North when it comes to planning, and I believe we're actually going backwards currently. So that is why I didn't actually comment when you asked for the comments on our ideas coming from PNCC, not the comments on other people's ideas that I don't know about. And to be quite honest, I don't even know what your ideas are about, so how can I comment on them? So that's why I put in my submission there, good consultation, as like the previous submitter asked. Because if we have the community being able to put their input in first before any decisions are made, I think we'll see some pretty amazing changes in this place. There's a lot of inconsistency in the designs and applications of how things are done. And I remember there's been a lot of discussion, for example, about raised pedestrian crossings. And in Terracine, we have a nice raised pedestrian crossing, and it's great. Everybody can be seen standing there waiting as the cars approach the crossing. But other crossings are informal. So this sends a mixed message to people. Same with cyclists. We've got a good example, a good innovation where we had dedicated cycle lights installed at Ruahine Street, Featherston Street. This has never been repeated before. We had a dedicated left-hand turn down on Fitzherbert and Te Awaioa Road. Great, never been done before again. And yet we go and put these stupid planter boxes on our highway that everyone crashes into because it's an obstruction in the roadway. Whereas I think there needs to be a bit of driver education when it comes to cyclists and other road users. But I wonder why these innovative ideas are never repeated throughout the city. So just as I say, in regards to the last submitter with footpaths, one thing I noted that in some streets where they reset the entire streetscape, you can get a good standard set for streets. But then again, in other areas where they reset the streetscape, there's a different standard applied. So I too asked that same question she asked, and I would like to see, as I say, that the community have the opportunity to have their input before decisions are made. And I noticed that idea was in the 10-year plan and it was cut out. Thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm. We have a question from Councillor Brent Barrett.
Thank you, Malcolm, and thank you for your written submission. I wanted to query, as you've put in writing in a number of the responses, meaningful, engaging, truthful consultation. I just wanted to pick up on that point of truthfulness.
Yeah.
Are you indicating that, or suggesting that the council's been untruthful?
Definitely. For example, and this is my pet example, the bus station scenario. That when that all changed, it was had been decided to have the regional buses placed in the old post office building. That secured the building for the future, and there's been a lot of negative comment about that building, which I totally agree with. But it's not all the owner's fault. The council reneged on its original decision on that process and decided to put the buses into the square, which everyone who consulted on had disagreed with that idea in the original consultation round. So it was dishonest.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you for your submission, Malcolm. Time is up.
I hope I wasn't too harsh. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We're not adjourning the meeting, but we're adjourning we're changing the location.
Now, councillors, our next submitter is Mr. Alan Barn, submission number 672. So what we will be doing is, it's unusual, but Mr. Barn can't make it into this chamber, and he is located front of house. So we will adjourn this location for 15 minutes while we go to the front of house to listen to the submission from Mr. Alan Barn, and then return back to the chamber.
Sorry, they are coming down because this submitter uses scooter.
Thank you, councillors, for your forbearance and sort of change in location. We'll now move on to submission number 662, Mr Andrew Watt, from the Mid Central DHB Public Health Services. And you understand the actual lighting system?
Yeah, I understand the traffic
Yes.
light, yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Kia ora koutou. As mentioned, my name is Andrew Watt. I'm a Health Protection Officer with the Mid Central District Health Board Public Health Service. Our submission notes the statutory basis it was made under. Our legislative mandate is to promote the reduction of adverse environmental effects to the health of people and communities and to improve, promote and protect their health. We wish to use this opportunity to speak to some aspects of our written submission. You will note from our submission that overall we are supportive of a number of projects and programs included in the long-term plan. We commend Palmerston North City Council for the work it has begun to mitigate and adapt to climate change. We strongly support the emphasis PNCC has placed on climate change, that PNCC has developed a draft climate change plan and has set greenhouse gas reduction targets. Horizons Regional Council is finalising a regional climate risk assessment at present. We recommend that when released, that assessment is used to inform PNCC's climate change plan. There may be specific risks identified that would need to be addressed in PNCC's climate change plan. While the Climate Change Commission report to government is yet to be finalised, their initial assessment concludes that New Zealand will not meet its greenhouse gas reduction targets without strong and decisive action now. We note that PNCC are one of a few local authorities in the Mid-Central region who have made a clear targeted commitment to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in their long-term plan. We commend PNCC for showing initiative and leadership by setting clear targets. We note that depending on direction from central government, those targets may need to be more ambitious over the period of the plan. However, by having set targets and working towards them, PNCC are well positioned to meet future targets set by government. We acknowledge that PNCC's draft climate change plan is an important first step in identifying priorities and initial actions to plan for climate change adaptation and greenhouse gas reductions. We support the development of a detailed low-carbon roadmap later in 2021. Now, the health risks associated with climate change are not only associated directly with weather events and increased temperatures. Examples of other health effects of current and future climate change include increased incidence of non-communicable diseases such as cardiovascular disease, spread of climate-sensitive disease such as dengue fever and disease vectors, increase of levels of pathogens in food and water leading to an increase in communicable disease. Climate change resilience and adaptation needs to consider all aspects of climate change that affect public health. We recommend that public health considerations need to be at the forefront of PNCC's climate change plan. We would welcome the opportunity to work with PNCC to provide public health input when developing and in future reviewing their climate change plan. The Royal Society, Te Aparangi, conducted an assessment of the human health impacts of climate change in 2017. They noted that the future health impacts of climate change are predicted to become increasingly severe, and they threaten to undermine the last 50 years of public health gains and development. They also noted that the elderly, people with disabilities, and low-income groups are especially vulnerable to the adverse effects caused by climate change. Due to housing and economic inequalities, Māori are particularly vulnerable as well. We submit that any climate change mitigation or adaptation plan needs to engage and consider the needs of vulnerable communities within the Palmerston North District. An equitable response to climate change will lessen the overall impact of climate change on public health, as an equitable response accounts for the needs of the most vulnerable and susceptible in society. Environmental Health Indicators New Zealand have developed a social vulnerability indicators down to the SA2 statistical area. That's the area just above a neighbourhood in stats when it comes down to it, if you didn't know that. Now, we submit that that information could be used to identify vulnerable communities in conjunction with local knowledge and existing relationships between council and the community. Now, our submission details those specific projects we support. Overall, we support the rationale of creating resilience to the adverse effects of climate change through improving infrastructure, as well as creating resilience to earthquakes in regards to Three Waters infrastructure. I'll just talk a little bit now about active transport. Okay. As well as reducing greenhouse gas emissions, active transport has well-established public health benefits, both to physical health and mental health. Almost 70% of trips made in New Zealand are less than 5 kilometres long, and are viable trips by either cycling or walking, provided that an efficient and safe environment is created for active transport. Perceived safety is one of the main barriers to people cycling or walking, be that through cyclists having to share busy roads with cars, or through road crossings which are not suitable for the elderly or disabled, or as a number of submitters have mentioned, the condition of footpaths. There is also another range of perceived safety risks which affect people either walking or cycling. We support PNCC's citywide urban cycle network and work to increase the uptake of active transport. We also support continuing citywide footpath improvements. We consider that low traffic neighbourhoods are a practical measure to improve the active transport environment for the Palmerston North community. Such initiatives are a practicable option for a city like Palmerston North that effectively has a square grid layout. Now, low traffic neighbourhoods create more connected, livable communities as well as promoting active transport. We recommend that PNCC consider such initiatives in consultation and co-design with communities. Waka Kotahi may have funding available in the future through the Healthy Families Program for such projects. Thank you for your opportunity to speak to our submissions. If there's any questions, happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Andrew. We have a question from Councillor Lorna Johnson.
Thanks, Mr Chair. And thanks, Andrew, for the submission. My question's around the DHB support for the local alcohol policy. So in your submission, you said that the DHB is happy to provide help and support for the development of the policy. Obviously, we've moved into the provisional policy area at the moment. But one of the issues that came up for us when working through the policy was a lack of local evidence of alcohol harm. And I wondered if the DHB is currently or would consider doing some statistic gathering or research in that area.
I'll just clarify, my submission is made on behalf of the Public Health Service, who are an aspect of the DHB, so I can't speak on behalf of the entire DHB. If there was requirements around gathering specific data, yeah, I wouldn't be able to answer whether that's viable or possible at the moment. I know that there are some general indicators, such like through Environmental Health Indicators New Zealand, but whether that's down to locally required, I don't know. However, if you'll find that our email address is on our submission, and if you email that through to me, I can get that followed up.
Okay, so to follow up then, in point 7 of your recommendations, when you say, we note our desire to help with the development of the local alcohol policy, what help was envisaged?
I'll be honest, that's not a part of the submission that I wrote. As I said, fortunately we were given a very short time frame to come to the submission due to our submission being, for some reason, received late when it was sent on time. But again, if you email that, I'll be able to get that followed up with the people who wrote that aspect of our submission.
Okay. Well, unless I've made a mistake, that is the submission that you're speaking to.
It is a submission I'm speaking to, but I said it's not an area of our submission which I specifically have expertise in, but I can get that information for you.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question here from the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Alicia Rutherford.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Thanks, Andrew. I've got a question around the active transport comments that were made, so hopefully you can help with those. When in your submission it says that we'd be happy to contribute to the development of school travel plans, are you able to expand on that? What does it mean by contribute to the development? Are you talking about helping write them, feeding information in, giving us some money to do it?
I can say it definitely wouldn't be giving money to do. It would be providing some expertise in regards to that helping development of, that we have health promoters who work in that area and that they have some expertise in that and be able to help with that, but you're definitely not a financial contribution.
Okay. And then the comments around the support for bikes in schools and aligning those, is that in reference to aligning it with the cycle master plan or key routes, or what specifically were those comments around?
Well, my understanding with their bikes in schools was that looking to increase that program where possible. I know that PNCC are one council who have been involved actively, and we commend and support PNCC for doing that. But my understanding is that it's more of a general looking to expand that program and support to do so.
So the comments around aligning it to, I've just lost the comment. In here, essentially, the comments are to align it to something. Is it just, you're just saying there's broad support for it, it's not specifically?
Broad support, I mean, we do mention a number of other cycle initiatives, so I think there's some general alignment to that, because of course the safer the general cycle environment is, the more of use bikes in school is, as it's then giving children the opportunity to cycle in a safer way on the roads. But as I said, generally we can offer some support, and with both the design and from a health promotion point of view with that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. That concludes your submission. The time is out, so thank you very much. Our next submitter is Jules Spicer, submission number 674. Just confirming that you understand the traffic light system.
I do now.
Thank you very much.
Right. Well, in common with our previous speaker, I'm also here to talk about community health, but from a different perspective. I want to talk about housing. I think we're all agreed that there is a housing crisis in New Zealand. No one would dispute that. And I think we'd all agree that something needs to be done. Right. Specifically, I want to talk about the land at the Terrace End Bowling Club at Summerhays Street. It's a lovely piece of land. It seems to me there's two options. One, sell it to a developer who'll put on so many 3-bed, 2-bath, double garage houses on each on its little section. They'll all then be sold. Some will be sold to investors, I'm guessing, who will then rent them out at eye-watering prices. So there's no change, or very little change, to the housing crisis in New Zealand. Or, and this is obviously why I'm here, there is another route, and one that I think goes much further to addressing the housing crisis. This piece of land is an amazing opportunity. It only comes up once in a blue moon, something like this, and the land could be used for medium density, affordable housing. There could be diversity of homes, anything from a bed set to a 1-bed to a 4-bed, maybe something on the Abbeyfield model. There could be a diversity of financial packages, rent to buy, sell the house, with the City Council as on some sort of a buyback, first offer buyback situation. The expertise is there for these sorts of things. There's plenty of housing trusts who've been exploring these ideas. The building, the layout, the financial packages, the expertise is there. So just imagine you could put Palmerston North on the map in New Zealand and internationally even for their award-winning housing project. What I'm here for is hopefully to stoke your imaginations to think there is another way. Okay? Some people may be thinking, oh, what about the money? What about the money? Because I know that's what you're meant to be thinking. So you could sell it, and that would certainly help with 1 year's rates, and then it's gone. The opportunity's gone, that's it. Or you could go the route I would obviously prefer. You could set up this wonderful project. It would be an income earner forever, and the returns wouldn't just be in dollars. The returns would be in a much healthier community. So, as I've said at the beginning, this opportunity comes rarely. So please, please don't think same old, think smarter. Housing is an essential part of community health. This is your chance. Please seize it, do something. Imagine Palmerston North could be a leader in housing projects of this nature. Open to questions.
Thank you, Jill. I have a potential question from Councillor Hapata. It was the previous one. Okay. Are there any other queries from anybody? Councillor Hancock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Jill. I think you mentioned an example of good practice in terms of medium density, high density housing. What was? Can you just
I
repeat
wasn't
that?
thinking of anything in specifically. I'm just knowing, you know, just from my reading, that there are all sorts of things, both in New Zealand and overseas, of projects of this nature.
Okay, nothing that comes to mind specifically.
Nothing specific. There is the Homes for People Trust here in Palmerston North, who I'm sure would be only too glad for you people to approach them.
Great, thanks very much. Cheers.
Councillors, if there are no other questions, thank you very much, Jill, for your submission.
Can I say one more thing before
You
I
may.
go? Palmerston North, Red Cross book sale, weekend after next, be there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Our next submitter is Mr. Kevin Judd, submission number 542. The floor is yours.
Welcome everyone. Good afternoon, Chairman, Councillors, Mr Murphy. I won't read through my qualifications or experience. They're there in my statement for reading if necessary, and firstly I'd like to thank you for the time to speak to our submission. Our main concern is with Council wishing to impose a site-specific additional roading development levy to Area M, which is known as the Whakaronga rezoning area, as detailed in the proposed long...
Can you come closer to the microphone?
I'll shift the microphone to me.
Thank you.
Did we get most of that, or do I have to?
Yeah, that's
You
right.
did? Okay. As detailed in the proposed LTP. As best as we can recall, the last 15 plus years, Council have been imposing the same roading levy, irrespective of location, for any residential development within the Palmerston North City Council district. As examples, and if you've got a copy of the statement here, if you go to page 3 on that submission, you'll see that the roading levies payable in 2009 was sheet 3, and the development levies payable in 2018, which is sheet 4. The second column in, which is called the under roading subdivision per additional allotment, all those figures are exactly the same. When you go to the proposed 2021 figures, you'll see that, which is the next piece of paper, you'll see that all but Area M has been given the courtesy of the same levy, which has actually got another $15,500 added to it. Council advises via their policy that the roading network is an unrestricted system and that roading development levies are applied citywide. The proposed additional levy to Area M would not appear to be supported by Council's own policy. Also attached is a sketch recently obtained from Council, which is the colour sketch, which details a possible development layout of Area M. This plan shows 2 direct links between James Line and Stony Creek Road, one on either side of a dissecting railway line. We see this plan providing connectivity through the area. This plan, however, requires approval from the Ministry of Education to adjust the Whakaronga school boundary. And so sort of give some context around that. The original structure plan, which I think is also provided. Did we provide that? Which I don't know which sheet of paper that is, but it's the one that's titled Map 7A Whakaronga Structure Plan. That shows the 2 connecting roads, well, one connecting road from James Line to Stony Creek on the northern side of the railway line, and on the southern side of the railway line running parallel to Napier Road. That road does not connect through to Stony Creek Road and is stopped by the school. And what the revised plan shows is the school boundaries being amended, allowing the connection to go through, which we think is a much better outcome. This plan, however, to amend the boundary, the school will require approval from the Ministry of Education to adjust the school boundary. Discussions have been had with the principal of the school, and they can see merit in allowing for the road connection through to Stony Creek. If this connection can be secured, we see no need to provide the vehicle link under the railway line. However, we do think a pedestrian/cycle link under the railway line could be supported to provide connectivity between the upper and lower terraces. Given the above, we submit that Council should not impose a site-specific development levy for Area M until Council have fully investigated all options with respect to roading layouts. We have discussed the layout with urban design experts, and they were somewhat surprised by the railway underpass and thought the connection through the school was a better outcome. We also asked Council have they obtained Kiwi Rail's permission in perpetuity to have a road under the railway line, which would be a requirement. We also attached Barrister John Marston's commentary on this matter. John unfortunately can't attend today. And in conclusion, and if you go to Mr Marston's commentary memo, he's got, on page 7, he's got 2 options there, and that is that the capital expenditure item for Area M underpass is deleted from the LTP and reconsidered after undertaking alternative engineering solutions, or alternatively, all development in Area M is only subject to the district-wide contribution per additional residential lot on the integrated network analysis until further work is undertaken, which aligns with the present council policy as we read it. Happy to take any questions, if there is any.
Thank you, Kevin. I have a question from Councillor Brent Barrett.
Thank you, Mr Chair, and thanks, Kevin. Your presentation and supporting material is quite clear. Just wanted to ask a broader question. Through the long-term plan draft, we've proposed a number of adjustments to the development charges, and just wanted to know if your silence on the others reflects endorsement, and it's only this particular matter that needs our attention.
I'm here appearing for the man to my left, who is the landowner. Perhaps that question might be better taken by him.
More than happy.
We considered that this was the biggest, by far the biggest disparity or disproportionate. So I think it'd be fair to say, in the overall, we think the other ones are fair enough. You could argue the point on them to some degree, but the one we've picked on is by far the biggest.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Just checking with the Deputy Mayor. Do you have a question?
Yes, Mr Chair. So I thought I might have been in the queue. Am I in the queue? Anyway, thank you. Thank you for your submission. I've just got a question around the underpass specifically, which has obviously been a part of the plans for some time. So in your submission, you reference the landowners not being in support. Are you able to give me an idea of how many landowners are there and how many are not supportive?
There is, in that block, there is, I think, potentially 5 or 6 landowners. One is the council, and I obviously don't have their opinion on that, and whether they're supportive or not is something that you can obviously inquire about. Next door is the Mitchells, and they own the land above and below where the underpass would go through, and they are not supportive of it at all. Down on the lower terrace, we have the Currys, who own 2 blocks down there, and they're not supportive of it, and that only leaves, I think, 2 other owners in the entire block, being Robinson and also, I think, Cooksley, who we haven't asked the questions of.
Okay, so you're aware of 2 of the 5?
Correct, but the major one is the person who...
Sure, okay, you're looking more at land size rather than individuals. Okay. And then the comment that if it is deemed that it's the best treatment for access, that it should be a city-wide levy rather than location-specific through the DCs. How would you respond to people in Linton who feel that they shouldn't pay for that through their rates?
It's a very good question. I think the answer to that is, and it's always been explained to me, is that you can drive anywhere you like in Palmerston North as a ratepayer, as you can in the free country that we live in. And therefore, your right to drive over a new bit of infrastructure is not determined by where you live, but the fact that you actually can drive anywhere because it's an unrestricted network. It's a bit the same with respect to water. I mean, the water comes from bores, it comes from the dam, but the water it probably costs more to get the water to Ashurst because it's got a long way to go and there's probably pumping required to get it there. But I don't think Ashurst is charged anymore because it's part of the overall network and it's part of the overall ease of applying development levies when you don't try and mandate it to specific areas. Because if you put the underpass in on a specific area, you're indicating that that specific area is the only people who are going to use it. And while you could ascertain that 70% of the people who live in Whakarongo might use that, that's not saying that if you were dropping your children off to that school, for instance, and you lived in, I don't know where, say Kelvin Grove, you would drive through that underpass, but you haven't paid for it. And so that's why you should impose a citywide levy covering all opportunities to drive anywhere. And if Linton decided to have an improvement, these people would be paying for that, even though they don't really go to Linton very often, if at all.
Okay. Would you accept that the need for the underpass would have a direct correlation, though, to development in that area?
If there is a perceived need for it, the benefit could be more appropriate to that area, but you could apply that to every single bit of infrastructure that you've put in. Like, for instance, Richardson's Line, for instance, where you're North East Industrial new zoning, there's a significant amount of roading money going in towards upgrading that road. And how many people who live in Whakarongo actually live there, work there, even go there? And so why are they contributing to that? So you have to sort of weigh that up, and I don't think you'd have it both ways. So I think it's a much simpler system to just have it citywide.
Thank you for your comments.
That's right.
That completes the questions, but I'll just ask for comment from the Acting General Manager, Strategy and Planning in respect of the charging regime.
Yeah, I won't comment on whether the underpass is required or not required, but what I will say is, and I had a quick chat with Kevin prior to him presenting, is we actually, as officers, met on this matter this morning, and the advice back to council is going to be that the underpass is part of the broader network in terms of the development contributions. So the recommendation back to council will be that the underpass is funded like the rest of the growth programs. So it's actually an anomaly in terms of the way we've prepared the calculations. So that will be the advice back.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for your presentation.
Could I just make a couple of comments?
You may.
I just wanted to say we really appreciate what the councillors and council officers do for the city, and our relationship with the council officers and constructive working through things. We just appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll next call on Mr. Steve Stannard of submission number 580 to make his presentation.
Thanks very much. Look, thanks for the opportunity to submit and present today. I made a large written submission containing a number of issues, comments and ideas, mainly based on my primary interest in improving activity in the city centre. I'm only going to talk to two of these today, and neither will relate to the stock cars. But both involve little or no costs, and I feel are easy wins. The first one is creating a regular sporting opportunity in the northwest quadrant of the square. The grass northwest quadrant of the square, it appears to me to be fairly poorly utilised. My suggestion is that it becomes a venue to regularly host football matches for 5- and 6-year-olds on a Saturday morning. There's ample room for 3 pitches, and at that age there's no permanent infrastructure required. It's brought along by the teams themselves and sometimes only consists of some witches' hats, road cones. This activity is going to bring people into the square on a Saturday morning, importantly parents in need of a coffee, and I guess that's my kaupapa. Parents and children will get the satisfaction of being able to play in a prime location, they'll look forward to it. And afterwards, of course, they can experience the inner city hospitality venues. Any impact on the grass will be minor because these kids really aren't very heavy. They don't even wear football boots, probably. And it's also going to assist scheduling of other matches at parks elsewhere. My second, or the part of the submission, the second part I'm going to talk to is making George Street more people-friendly. You'll be aware that at the start of the year, we went through, I think, 4 or 5 Sunday and the odd Monday closures of George Street for 4 hours on a Sunday morning. That was funded by money from NZTA and assisted and organised through the council staff. By and large, these were very successful. And the businesses that were open did very well. That money from NZTA has been spent, but we need to continue the momentum for improving people access on that street. The opportunity is now. So what I would like to see is the following. A change in the scope of the Streets for People projects to include George Street and Coleman Mall in any design work. To support continuation of the process to partially close George Street, and when I say a partial closure, ideally one way, and that, of course, will not impact upon parking. In fact, it may provide more parking opportunities, which will allay some of the fears of some of the businesses, at least initially. Approve a new program to fund improvements to George Street and Coleman Mall and possibly Main Street to complete the link from the CBD to the arena area. And this could possibly be done through work with the new Business Improvement District people and the businesses on the street to make this happen, and there's a lot of interest to do that. Council, of course, are aware, and some of the other submitters have mentioned, that to meet CO2 emissions targets, we have to reduce our transport costs, or certainly reducing transport costs in the city are the most achievable way of doing this. And one easy way to reduce carbon costs in the city, of course, is to discourage through traffic in the middle of town. And my suggestion of at least initially making George Street a one-way street, and I don't know which way that would be, there's greater minds than mine, would certainly assist in that. I don't see too many initiatives which are aimed at or effective at removing cars from the city centre, but this one will certainly go towards doing that. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. We have a question from Councillor Brent Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Steve. Love the idea of the kids' sports on Saturday, but questions were around the George Street comments there. So I guess your proposal to see it sort of mapped into the Streets for People, you're probably aware that Streets for People's a fairly investment-intensive program, and potentially that brings up an affordability question, and whether in your view, it needs, I guess, that level of treatment and standard versus some perhaps lower cost options that might still deliver the same space for people.
I'm not expert enough to know what the cost of making it a one-way street is going to be, but I feel that, I mean, certainly if I look at the changes that have been made in Cuba Street, they look as though they're quite costly. I'm not suggesting anything like that. I'm suggesting just a change in the direction of traffic in the first instance. And the beauty of doing that, when you think about it, and as I say, I don't know which direction it would be, you have to talk to the traffic engineers, is that you can then easily close a street off, because once cars are in, they can just go out in one direction. So, as I say, I'm not an expert, but I feel it's an easy way, it's an easy win. We're not talking about initially getting rid of car parking spots, although I'd like to see that happen, but all we're doing is talking about just letting the cars through one way. I would point out that we would let the bicycles go both ways. Probably the main thing it would be some street signage, I would think, and maybe some markings on the road. I'm not expert enough to know exactly what the legalities are required.
Great, thank you. And I might just follow up. So the sort of benefits that you pointed to in terms of the the pop-up closures that were weekend-based, sort of how translatable those sort of weekend experiences are to weekday type experiences in terms of the sort of clientele that you see and what activities are in the street?
Look, I think a weekend, I mean, I can only speak in the context of my business. The weekend clientele is a little bit different, and it was successful for those people. What I do know as a business person, as well as I guess a person that would, a pedestrian and a cyclist, is that you still need access to George Street, for our side at least. We don't have back access. You still need access from the street, but you can time that. There's some great examples of, for instance, pop-up, and this is where money does come in. You can have pop-up barriers that someone can switch on and up. They come at a particular time of day. So vehicle access can be timed. Yep. I don't know if that's answered your question, but look, there's any number of options, but I think at the end of the day, someone has to do something about removing or trying to remove cars, or at least cars just going through town using George Street as a rat run from the inner city, and here's an easy way to do it that the businesses will get behind.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Question from Councillor Harpiter.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Steve. Just taking you up on your Saturday morning sport, which,
yes,
again, I think is a great idea, but looking at the practicality of it, we've got sports fields around the city, and some people have come here to say that we should sell our sports fields, sell our green spaces. Just the use of sports fields are there to play sport on, so just your idea. We've got people are saying we should sell them. So what's your feeling on, selling our reserves and selling our sports fields? What's your feeling on that as opposed to your idea of using a space that's in the square?
Well, firstly, using the space in the square is trying to bring people into town for a very positive activity.
Yeah.
The square is our biggest asset and our biggest problem because it doesn't get used enough. So here's an example of being able to use that. In terms of our recreational facilities overall, I mean, I think some work well and some don't. I don't use them enough. I'm not expert at them. I think there's opportunities to look forward. We have a problem with housing, and you people have heard submissions on that. Maybe some of those could be used to provide housing, and then if there's money involved, we could look at where there's going to be developments out of town, large sporting facilities that are purpose-made. I'm not sure. I'm not an expert. Green space is really important, but I should point out, and in the middle of town is important too. But if you ain't got a roof over your head, that's difficult.
Thank you.
Question from Councillor Naylor.
Thank you, and thanks, Steve, for your submission. I just have a question about something you've written in your written submission on page 3 under the heading of ideas for international relations, and you've suggested the idea of a sister city in Australia.
Yes.
I'm interested in understanding what your view is about the sister cities that we have around the world, obviously further afield. Whether you're suggesting that we would continue with that, or what is your thoughts on that?
Look, I don't know enough about the activities that go between the sister cities. It would make sense. I don't think we have a sister city in Australia, do we? Well, at the moment, there are only international visitors, apart from Melbourne. And it would make sense to have if you've got a sister city, have a close relationship. And I guess, I've got a foot each side of the Tasman, I suppose, so it probably makes me a bit biased, but why wouldn't you do that? The closer the sister city, the better. There must be advantages for it, and when they're really far away, I guess it's just harder to interact.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Steve. Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Our next submitter is Hamish, submission number 680.
Good afternoon. My name is Hamish Edmonds. I'm a year 11 at Palmerston North Boys High School, and I'm 15 years old. For the past 4 years, I've been playing water polo. So we used a boys' high training for Manawatu and for the boys high training. In the pool, we have approximately 20 players in the deep end of the pool, as that's the only part which we can use. We train most mornings and afternoons during the week and also on Sundays. So over the past 4 years, the local and school clubs have grown a lot, with multiple teams for most age groups and genders. So weekly, we play in Wellington on Thursday nights for game experience in a deep water pool with trained staff and equipment. Our coach and our group of parents provide transport for us to get to Wellington and back. We leave straight after school and get back between 11 and 12 p.m, ready for training the next day at 6:30. So I'm proposing for the development of a new pool in Palmerston North, preferably a deep water and 50-metre one, as this will help us improve our game and fitness, also for all sports. It will also allow us to host regional and national tournaments in water polo, swimming, canoe polo, underwater hockey and others. So recently in March, we hosted a senior men's water polo tournament at Linton Military Pool. We were really appreciative of them allowing us to use it, as we only gained access to it last year in the earlier parts. We got feedback from competitors there, and they said they really enjoyed coming to Manawatu and Palmerston North. So they really enjoyed the experience, the staff, and the grounds of the place. So in my opinion, a deep water 50-metre pool will be helpful for us for bringing more tourism and others for Palmerston North. Thank you for the opportunity of listening to my submission.
Thank you, Hamish. We have a question from the Deputy Mayor, Alicia Rutherford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Hamish, for coming in to speak to your submission. We've had a proposal from CLM at the Lido to cover their outdoor pool as a way to address the pool shortage that's come quite clearly through submissions, including yours. I wondered what your view on that would be, whether that would meet the need, even if it was in a shorter term, to be able to use that throughout winter?
So it would possibly address the need. So for water polo, the pools are mainly heated, and outdoor ones are less hospitable for players. Also, it's the same with canoe polo, as they are less shaded than us. So it may address it, but then it also could pose risks for the players and staff members there.
Okay, what would some of those risks be?
So it would depend if the water would be heated. So for water polo, we are constantly submerged, so it could chill, so maybe slight hypothermia or anything like that.
Okay, thank you.
A question from Councillor Brent Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Hamish, for bringing water polo to our attention. We've had a number of other codes, but I think this is the first we've heard specifically in this round around water polo. Just wanted to understand, so a couple times, if I heard correctly, you were talking about a 50-metre pool, and I see in the written submission, if I've read it correctly, that you're indicating a 25, and I just wanted to know if your views have changed since you wrote it, or if just where you're really at on that.
So in the submission, I did say a 25-metre pool, but then my views have changed, as a 50-metre pool will also allow us to hold swimming competitions, so regional long course, which is hosted in Auckland or Wellington, I'm pretty sure. So then also for water polo and canoe polo, they require 25 metres, so the pools could be shortened while keeping the other half for swim trainings and other events.
Right, thank you for clarifying that. Thanks.
I have a question from Councillor Lorna Johnson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Hamish, for coming in to talk to us about this. Can you give us an idea of what the player numbers are like for water polo locally? You know, how many teams there are? I don't even know how many are in a team. So just give us a bit of background as to how many people you think might be using a pool for water polo.
So for water polo, there are 7 people in the pool for either team at a time. So there's 1 goalie, 6 field players, and in most teams there are about 14 players at a time. And within New Zealand, there are clubs in almost every major city, where there be, I think there's approximately 6 clubs within Auckland, 2 within Wellington, Tauranga, and other ones, sounds like that. So they would all have multiple people coming down.
So is it age graded like rugby and soccer are?
So there's juniors, under 12s, under 14s, 16s, 18s, and senior men's. So senior men's is 21 years and above, and there's also, I think it's Champions Division, which is 40 plus.
And would we have all of those here in Palmerston North?
Yes, so there's all of those tournaments are mainly hosted in Wellington and Auckland. So the senior men's tournament we hosted at Linton was 21 plus years old, or 21 around that age years old.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Here we go. We have a question from Councillor Pat Hancock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Hamish. And look, I just really want to sort of clarify something. Is the Deputy Mayor talked to you, or just asked a question about the Lido. Now, the Lido is a 50-metre pool and is obviously cold water, but in terms of depth, is that restrictive for water polo? Because I see in your submission that 2 metres minimum is required uniformly in the pool for water polo. Can you just talk about that?
So for water polo, the depth of 2 metres or more is required, as the game will be affected. So for us in Boys Hire, we're going to use the depth of 2 metres at the deep end, because if we're using the 1.4 metre end, we are not training correctly, and we'll have an advantage over, or we just lose training, our fitness and everything. So in other pools, they have either lowered floors or just constant depths of 2 metres. So that is just because to ensure fairness on both teams. So one team does not have an advantage over the other while they are down that end.
And the depth of the Lido pool, is that a uniform depth, and does it meet the requirements?
No, I'm 1.87 metres, and I can comfortably stand on the bottom of the Lido deep end pool.
And the shallow end is obviously a lot less than that?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Question from Councillor Billy Meehan.
Thank you, Hamish. You mentioned before about the age groups playing, and you said senior men's. Is there a senior women's, or do you do mixed men's and women's?
There are, so up to under 16s there are mixed, and then under 18s, 21s and senior men's. So senior women's is much less popular, as I don't think there are tournaments for that in New Zealand, just to the lack of popularity. But up until all other age groups, there are women's teams.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hamish. We don't have any other questions, and you answered the questions very well. Well done. Thank you for your submission.
Thank you.
Before we take a break, councillors, we will have one more submitter, the Disability Reference Group, Rose Body and Jenny. And that's submission number 540.
Oh, Kylie, sorry, it's Kylie.
Kylie. Was it Kylie? Rose and Kylie. That's all right.
Yes, and the microphone's where?
Welcome, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Your Worship, Mr. Chairman, City Councillors, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our Palmerston North, an inclusive, connected, safe and vibrant city which attracts disabled people because of its flat terrain, central location and big city benefits in a convenient package. In our Palmerston North, we can move around the city and suburbs as safely and efficiently as anyone else. We can participate in our community and socialise easily because we don't have to plan everything in advance unless we want to. Accessible, affordable housing, combined with an equitable and mutually respectful working partnership with Council, also helps to ensure that unemployment amongst our people is the same as the national average for the general population, instead of the estimated global average of 73%. In short, our Palmerston North is a place where disabled people want to live. People who come here will find a treasure vault full of potential. Inside, it's packed to the gunnels with safety deposit boxes, bursting with precious gems of all shapes, sizes, colours, cuts, and from all parts of the world. But over in the far corner, there's quite a large box which is covered in dust. It's only partly full because some of its treasure has been stuffed down the back of sofas, secreted away in sock drawers, even inadvertently discarded. There is hope, though, because you need 2 keys to open a safety deposit box. One from you as our elected representatives and one from the community. That would be us. The submission we've offered could be the first step on a journey of respect for and recognition of our mutual expertise and the eventual realisation of this vision for our Palmerston North. Will you help us to make it a reality? Committee Chair, Rose Body.
And that's a really tough act to follow. Oh dear. So you've just got the plain speaking, Rose, now. My apologies. So, of course, we put our submission together, and I agree with everything, we agree as a committee with everything that Kylie so eloquently put forward. There's another couple of points I want to add in about 1 minute or less. Firstly, the Enabling Good Lives principles that are embedded within the submission are really important, and within the disability community nationally, it appears to be the model that disabled people want to use going forward. This is really exciting, and you would be the first council to adopt it and embed it in the whole of the country. Secondly, we contend that inclusive needs to be added to the strategy of connected community strategy. Inclusive means something different than connected. It means it values diversity. Inclusive engages all its citizens in decision-making processes that affect their lives. It works to eliminate all forms of discrimination. Inclusiveness does everything that it can to respect all its citizens, to give them full access to resources, and promotes equal treatment and opportunity. We contend that we need to go beyond connected. Thank you.
Councillors, any queries? We have a question from Councillor Brent Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Rose. Thank you, Kylie, for the presentation. Just wanted to ask a question, if I could, around something that came through in the written document, the written submission, which was around the digital accessibility of documents from Council, and just wanted to understand if that's something that you're trying to progress through the Disability Reference Group, and if it's hit some roadblocks there, and so you're bringing it here, or sort of what do you see as the way forward there?
I think the way forward is working in partnership both with Council and staff to ensure that the WCAG 2 guidelines are followed. And we can help with that because we have expertise in all different areas of disability, and the expertise in that area happens to be mine. So I'm very happy to work with whoever wants to work with me.
Great, thank you, Kylie. If I can, Mr. Chair, just follow up then to understand if there's other councils or organizations in New Zealand that have successfully transitioned to that standard, and what financial or other implications or necessities have been in that transition.
Wellington, I think, probably is the best example because they've had a reference group for quite some years now. Financially, I'm not quite sure it's about cost. It's about a different mindset and teaching people different skills. So I don't think there are any financial costs. Retrofitting is always much harder. So if you learn to build an accessible document from the ground up, there's much less work involved in making it be whatever it needs to be for whoever it needs to read it.
Great. Thank you very much, Kylie. That's very helpful to understand that, Mr. Chair.
I have a question from Councillor Lorna Johnson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Rose and Kylie, for your presentation and the extensive written submission. I guess I just want to follow up your comments, Rose, about the Enabling Good Lives principles, because we have already adopted them as a city council.
Yes.
Was there something more that you wanted to see around that?
I guess there's some to see the link between adopting them and the reality. That's all, and I think sometimes that can help. The submission talks to that, kind of some of the things that would perhaps be outcomes of the principles.
Okay, so so you didn't really see that coming through in the long-term plan documents, is that what you're saying?
No, we did not. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that.
Thank you.
And then the other question was about the addition of the word inclusive in the strategy title.
Yes.
We have debated this. Our difficulty, I suppose, is that we don't really want the strategy title to become a long list of adjectives of, descriptors of the community.
Yes.
We have got inclusive as one of our key values.
Yes.
Can you see some kind of solution here?
I guess I understand what you're saying, but having looked at lots of different policies for lots of different communities across the world, inclusive seems to come along with connected or instead of. It just seems to be more kind of emboldening and sort of involving everyone. So I appreciate what you're saying, but that's from what I've read and what I've heard and what I trialled with a whole lot of different people, obviously just my straw poll, and not just within the disability community either. Just seems to promote, I guess, more than just connecting with each other.
If I could please add that having it as part of the vision title would help to keep it front of mind, because what inclusiveness does for us as a disabled community is it's more about respecting us as contributors and people with knowledge more than just recipients of service as we have traditionally been. And that's why we feel it's important.
Yes, and I think that's coming across. I guess I'm trying to look for a solution that doesn't involve a whole list of things in front of the strategy, that's all.
Only one more word though, Lorna.
Yes.
Well,
you could substitute it for it connected, because it goes further and I think means so much more than the word connected. Perhaps that could be a solution.
Okay, thank you.
Question from Councillor Leonie Harpiter.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Rose and Kylie. Just looking at your section on transport, I just wondered if you'd pose these questions to the Horizons Council, because some of them are about the bus transport and some of them are around buses being both physically accessible and affordable, and also about the frequency of the buses. So I just wondered if those questions have been posed to Horizons.
Without going into detail, it's fair to say that I've had limited success in engaging Horizons.
Okay.
But I appreciate what you're saying.
Disappointing to hear.
Yeah, and I do appreciate the buses are not the City Council's.
Yeah. No, both Councillor Barrett and I are on that group, so we'll try and take that up.
They're very good gatekeepers, is what I'm saying.
I think any weight that you could give to any submissions we make would also be hugely appreciated.
Great. Thank you. We will. Thank you.
Thank you, Kylie and Rose, for your presentation, and that concludes the session. Thank you. We will now break for 15 minutes, and to the general public that want to have a coffee or tea, there is some out in the foyer here, and we will meet back here at 3:20. When they arrive, you feel good. Yeah. Okay, councillors, we'll reconvene our hearings. Our next submitter is Matthew, and Matthew will be submission number 643. Welcome, Matthew. .43.
Good afternoon, Chairman and councillors. I will be talking about my idea, which is to replace old street lamps and make some new street lamps for streets, which will give off a brighter LED. Will be brighter LED street lamps. I'll mainly be talking about how it will help us in 3 ways. These ways are how it can reduce crimes committed at night, how it's a greener solution, and how it can encourage more people to feel safe at night and encourage them to walk at night. I'll talk about why I think it may make people in Palmy feel a lot safer. Palmerston North is a really safe town, but we still endure crimes like every other town. I believe with brighter streetlights we can reduce some of them. Most often roads, it's not a problem because they're usually lit very favourably, but in the suburbs, it's a lot more dim with warmer lights instead of bright LED lights, street lamps. For example, I don't know if any of you have been to the old Massey Teacher College at night or by the lagoon, but it's very, very dark, poorly lit with dim, warm bulbs, and it doesn't help due to the street lamps being very far apart, which can leave these exceptionally large spots of darkness, which can make people unsafe, feel unsafe. I will list most of the common crimes committed at night is driving under the influence, assault, robbery, property damage, house break-ins, and car theft. Although we cannot prevent some like driving under the influence and most assaults, we can lower the chances of the other 3 with brighter streets. Most crimes are committed due to night, I believe, because of the low visibility. To make sure no witnesses see the crime, like mugging or car theft. This is done so the criminal can get away without being seen. But with brighter street lights, if there were people around or witnesses around, there will be more higher chance of someone witnessing the crime due to the streets being a lot brighter, making people feel a lot safer. Because more LED street lights have a lot more advantages to the current street lights or the the really old street lights, but due to LEDs being extremely energy efficient and can generate more light for less power than the average street lamp, and they also have a very long lifespan, with some new lamps saying that they can last over 100,000 hours. There's also another benefit to them being very energy efficient is that they don't use up as much electricity, which makes them a greener solution to our current lights, which means we can re-advert our energy into other uses or use it as not having to produce as much energy and make us go a bit greener. People are less likely to walk at night. Personally, I don't feel safe walking at night where I live due to the lights being considerably dim and considerably dim, and the road's the only thing illuminated on just one side, and because of this, this meaning only. Brighter street lights can help. Most people there work the average 9 to 5 work shift to get home around 5 or later. And if it's winter, they're usually coming home when it's just getting dark. On top of that, they then make dinner usually to feed themselves, and then they can no longer exercise in winter because the streets are dark and they're only illuminated by the dim lights. But in summer, this is different due to it still being bright outside when they get home, and then that means they can exercise in that, or just go for a walk to go get some groceries or something. So why don't we just keep up with this good habit of not having to use as much cars and just walk more? But the reason most people don't do this is because in winter it's cold and it's also very dark, and this doesn't help for the suburbs. My three main reasons were why adding or replacing current poor street lamps with brighter LEDs lamps make Palmy a better place, were how it can make people and the citizens in Palmy feel safer, advantages of LED street lamps, and how it can encourage more people to go outside at night.
Thank you, Matthew. I have a question from Councillor Butt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Matthew, for your presentation. I'm not sure whether it is an appropriate question or not. Can I ask how old is Matthew and why you are out at night so often?
I'm 14, and when I used to live in central town, I used to go outside at night with my mum to go walking to if it's just to get some groceries or anything that we forgot to get for dinner.
Fair enough, fair enough. And did this idea come from a school project, or where did you get this idea of changing all these lights and comparing these?
When I was writing the form that was given in our social studies class, I just thought of it on the spot. I didn't know what I was going to write till the last 3 minutes that we were given. So I just thought, what's a thing that I would like for it, and so the first thing that popped into mind was that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I have a question from Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Matthew, for your submission and for taking the time to come in and talk about it. I wonder if you know that we did change the bulbs to be LED bulbs a few years ago. Did you know that?
Yes, I know that you've changed most of the bulbs, but I believe there is still some bulbs that haven't been changed.
So is your submission about the ones that haven't yet been changed, or about all of them?
The ones that haven't been changed, and also adding a bit more to the really dim places with only a single street lamp per street.
So there is a program that we've got in the plan to upgrade the streets that don't have enough lights at the moment. And you mentioned that your street was not very bright at night. So afterwards, if you like, we can check to see if yours is one of the streets that's in the plan to be upgraded. But if we look at the streets that you know have been changed, that have got the very white light as opposed to the yellowy light, which is the old lights, do you think that they're bright enough?
I believe that they are bright enough to make people feel safer, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you for that. And maybe I'll just check with you if your street's on the list for upgrading afterwards. Thank you.
We have a question from Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I've just come out of the queue because Councillor Johnson beat me to the punch. Thank you.
One question I have for you, Matthew, in terms of your observation about the dull nature of the lighting, can that or has that occurred because of the tree placings or more the actual spacing of the poles?
Mainly the spacing, and sometimes the trees, growing over it. but mainly the spacing, sometimes not even being any lights present.
We don't have any further questions, so thank you very much for your submission, Matthew, and well done. And the council will debate your submission into the future, and you'll be advised of the outcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next submitters are from Netball Manawatu, Mr. Chris Gunn and Andy Martin, sort of submission number 563. Gentlemen, so I presume you are aware of the timing system. Green is 7 minutes, amber 3 minutes, and 1 minute when you get to red. So if you want to leave a bit of time for questions, then the presentation needs to be shortened. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Chris Gunn from Netball Manawatu, and here with Andy Martin from Manawatu Lawn Tennis. And this is our multi-code submission, and as many of you know, or most of you know, that this is our we have already presented to Council, and we're very excited to be able to be here again and talk some more. We're super excited about this this potential project and what it offers. Certainly, the 6 codes that are involved and the couple of education providers, but certainly the wider community too. And we think that there's a lot of merit for why this should happen. And inside this next stage submission, we've gone through and just articulated some of those key rationale or key reasons why we think that we need to push forward with this under urgency, to be honest. And inside the document, which you all would have had a look at, we go through and we talk about, obviously there's strong support from those 6 codes and the education facilities and some other support letters and bits and pieces that show the data, the rationale behind the numbers, the strong participation growth. It talks a bit about the latent demand, the opportunities that people are missing out on by not being able to be involved due to those pressures at CET Arena, due to the lack of court space. The inside pressures are creating meaning that we can't provide all our opportunities, and additionally the benefits of having a covered surface in relation to SunSmart, in relation to reducing injuries, not wet courts. So there's a lot of good reasons why we want to push forward with this. What we've done is we've gone away since our last presentation and we've looked at some other designs or some other builds that have taken place, in particular the Masterton courts there, and we've shown inside our document the costings for that. Additionally, we've also spoken to a range of other providers, and for example, another way to do it is the Big Dome, and Otago Boys High School, is that what it is moving forward on that. They're starting the build on that shortly, and that's sort of at the higher end of things, but what it offers is something quite incredible, but that's a sort of a bigger ticket item. What we're really wanting here is to be able to move forward in this process, to get it included and to be able to work through that next step, which I believe would be the feasibility study. Andy, would you like to add anything to that?
I think just what do I do? I think just following on from our previous submission, the key here is we're looking for this is a covered facility. This is not a new facility. We're not investing a huge amount of money here. We're looking for a covered facility to one, take away some of the excess demand for CET Arena, but 2, currently there are no indoor facilities that we can use, and as soon as it rains, we cancel. So this provides a real opportunity at a relatively low cost to cover part of Vortia Park, to allow netball to go on, to allow tennis to go on, to allow basketball, and a number of other sports. And as Chris indicated, this is urgent. This isn't something that we can put off. Currently, a number of sports are not able to complete their requirements because they just can't get indoor facilities. So yeah, happy to take questions following I guess this is our second submission, if you like, to this committee.
Yeah, we're pretty passionate about this because we know that that demand is there. You know, we see it every day. We know that that this is actually an easy to do, to be honest. Like, you know, that we can get this done. From our last submission, you know, there was some coverage on in the Manawatu Standard or stuff or what have you, and there's quite a, you know, I've had a number of people from the community, you know, all excited and so on about this. So this is a big win-win project for the city, and I think, yeah, this really, we should be pushing forward with this, but we certainly welcome your questions and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, gentlemen. I have a question from Councillor Beattie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your presentation. Is the costings, the 300,000, based on the Masterton costs?
Yep, that's the Masterton facility was a new facility, so they built club rooms, they built a whole lot of new courts, so their total cost was around $2 million, but that's a new facility. The cost there for 300,000 is the roofing cost.
Yes, I see. It's the roof
again,
structure.
I guess to reinforce that what we're looking here to is covering existing courts. So again, there are a number of different options of how that could be done. Fully covered with 4 walls and a roof, or just a roof, and there are a number of different ways that you could do the roof as well. So yep, you could put a bubble over that. So there, as with all these things, there are different levels of costing, but probably around the minimum costing would be around that $300,000 mark.
So when Masterton did theirs, how long ago, like how relevant are these costings?
That's been done sort of 2 or 3 years, I think it was, yeah.
So you're aware that costs have significantly gone up in the last 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, so that figure is representative of the current costing, not the actual costing of 2 years ago.
Oh, okay.
So that's a slight, I think it was around 200 and something.
Yeah, 166, I think it was, yeah.
So it's, I guess it's an indicative cost of what we think would be the opportunity of covering the current courts.
But it's in today's cost. So
Yeah,
that's
thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question from Councillor Brent Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Andy. In some ways, maybe a rhetorical question, but it's been raining forever in the Manawatu. So why wasn't it urgent 5 years ago? What's the now bit of this?
It's demand. It's demand. So netball 25 years ago was ladies sitting around a kitchen table arranging netball on a Saturday afternoon, and there was a certain amount of netball that occurred. There are now 3 full-time staff, there are now 3 internship students from Massey, there are programs going on, and that's one sport. Now add to that basketball, football, tennis, etc. We're now in a professional environment where sport development is around, you know, Sport New Zealand's around getting everybody active more often. It's a key part of any council strategy to look after their people. And the demand is just huge. So they can't do their jobs, frankly.
Thank you. And secondly, if I might, in terms of the urgency to bring it from year 4 to year 1, is the case there principally just around earlier realization of benefits, or are there other, I don't know, relational factors or external funding factors that are also time sensitive that drives the year 1 versus year 4?
I think if I use one sport, which is futsal, so futsal had, I think in the document, something around about 2,000 participation numbers in the arena about 2 years ago. They've now got 200 because they can't use the arena. So this is urgent. Sports cannot continue. COVID's part of that because the arena was shut and we had flooding and all that sort of stuff. But there is significant demand there which can't be utilised. And we've got latent demand as well because there are, basketball, for example, have a program that was, they had funding for a program that couldn't go ahead because they couldn't get into the arena. So you're wasting your money, you know, they couldn't access that funding money. So it's urgent. We're stopping kids participating now, today, because we can't actually access indoor facilities. And yes, you can go outside, but it does rain in the Manawatu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
One query I have, gentlemen, is at Vordia Park, have the power issues been resolved?
Yeah, yes, they have. A new transformer was put in last year, and so we're all sorted there. Thank you. Good question.
Very good. Thank you.
I think one more point to add, that there is currently a feasibility study going on with the Manawatu District Council around an indoor facility for fielding. And I guess the location of Vortia Park means that this feasibility study that's going currently, we've been part of that feasibility study. So Vortia Park is 10 minutes away from fielding. So if we cover Vortia Park, we're actually getting two bang for your bucks. You're getting 2 for 1. Yeah, I think we need to be cognizant. There's another feasibility study going on, and actually maybe we could save our money and use that feasibility study to say, well, let's go ahead and do it anyway.
I'm happy with that, Andy.
Good.
And the final question from Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I guess that just fits in quite well with what you've just said, because in your submission you've mentioned that the regional sports facility plan doesn't particularly say that this is a priority. So one of the things that we're going to be doing when we're thinking about where to spend money is looking at that regional facility plan and deciding, you know, does this fit with the regional plan? So, I mean, what's your answer to that?
So some of that information was from 2018, I think, was it?
It was in your submission.
Yeah.
It says page 21 of the regional.
Oh, yeah. And I think, you know, certainly what's come up in the last sort of year or so really is those pressures on CET. And I think, you know, while with majority of sports, you know, we're all operating in the same windows, you know, that after school sort of period, and that's when it comes to a head really. Whereas the facility, it does show that there is opportunity, but not at the times that the community are wanting them.
I think just maybe to add to that, one of the issues with the regional facility plan is that it's often reliant on single code. And one of the advantages of, I guess, this submission is it's probably one of the first multi-code submissions. So this isn't as one sport singing their tune saying this is what we need. It's not a bowls club saying we need a bowls court or whatever. This is a multi-code submission saying we have a big issue. So maybe in that facility plan that issue wasn't there because codes are putting individual submissions in. This is, as Chris said, has come to the fore, it's come to the head. COVID, the problems with arena, and there isn't a plan going forward for these indoor facilities unless we rebuild Barber Hall, and that's a new facility. So you could argue this is a temporary fix. In other words, we cover a facility, but unless the council is willing to build a new indoor facility, where are you going to get a new indoor facility quick? Well, the solution is cover Vortia Park, and let's do it now.
Thank you very much for your presentation, gentlemen, and that concludes your submission.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, councillors.
Next we have Eugene and friend, submission number 678. Now, just to brief you on the timing process, the green light is 7 minutes. When it gets to amber, you've got 3 minutes, and when you've got down to red, you've got 1 minute. Okay, and if you'd like to push the button in front of you when you want to speak, yep, floor's yours.
Well, hello. Our plan, we were thinking getting a pool, a 25-metre pool. We play water polo at the Pami Boys. We really love our sport, but we have to go away for tournaments, and that creates some problems with us for transport, cost. If we were to get a pool, we would be able to host tournaments in Pami. That would help the economy, more people coming in, using the motels and stuff. And yeah,
because our current facility doesn't really facilitate what we plan to do, because at our pool at Pami Boys we only have a shallow end and a deep end, and that kind of makes it hard for us to train, as when we go away we have to play in deep end only pools. So when we play in our pool, it just kind of, it doesn't really let our Manawa teams get to our full potential that we'd like to be at. Whereas if we had a deep water pool, as to say, it would very much help us as would be fully ready for tournaments because of us been training in deep end. Because currently we have to go out to Linton, and we've had like special permission from one of the lieutenants out there, or colonels, and he said that we're allowed to go out and train on there on one day only a week. And sometimes with like interviews and stuff around school, we've only got one coach that can help us get out there. So yeah, it just kind of creates transport issues sometimes for our whole team to get out there. So if we had this pool, it would be a very major help to not just us, but swimming, water polo, and the community.
Does that conclude your submission, or do you wish to make further statements?
Well, for tournaments, we're usually going to like Auckland, Wellington, Hamilton, and just to name a few, and sometimes down south. So if we could have a pool like this, it'd create, like we'd just have all the teams come down, we could host our own tournament. That'd just be better for us.
Very good. I have a question from Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Eugene and Isaac, thank you. Eugene, in your submission, you said that the pool would need changeable depth. We've had another submission earlier this afternoon from someone who plays water polo, who said that the water polo depth needs to be 2 metres. Is changeable depth an important aspect, or is it just that it's deep enough?
Well, it would be nice to have a changeable depth, but 2 metres is just enough.
Okay, so what's the advantage of a changeable depth? Can you explain that to me?
So changeable depth would help with swimmers, because if we had changeable depth in our pool, it means that younger swimmers could use it for swimming lessons and stuff. Also, we could use it for water polo, so it would be, two birds with one stone.
Right, thank you, because I hadn't understood that. So a changeable depth allows it to be made shallower for learner swimmers,
yes,
and then deeper for when you want to play your...
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool, thank you.
I have a question from Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks to you guys for coming in. Just the submission that we had earlier on today was put in a submission for a 25-metre pool, and I see you've put in the same, but he changed his mind to a 50-metre pool. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, well, for swimmers, it doesn't, 50 metres and 25 metres, it's kind of the same. There's some long course swimming, that's 50-metre pools, and then short course is 25-metre pools. In water polo, we use 25-metre pools. So if you had a 50-metre pool, just add a bit more room, I guess.
With the 50-metre pool, we could get like pillars, because so we play at one pool in Wellington Regional Aquatic Centre, and they have a 50-metre, but we play in the 25 area of it for national tournaments. So I went to the under-14 age group tournament last year, and they have like pillars sort of things that go into the water, and they change the depth from 50 to 25 to facilitate for water polo. And then when it's swimming in long course and stuff, because they also host the swimming events, like they're one of the best swimming sort of pools in New Zealand. So when they go there for swimming, they just take it out for long course and other events.
Okay, sorry, just one more question there, Mr. Chair, if I could. So just when you go away for tournaments, so are you playing in a 50-metre pool, and they're able to have, 2 games on the courts at the time, or how does that work?
Normally we just play, it depends what kind of pools, because when we're in Auckland we play at like Sacred Heart, we could play at Auckland University, their pool. So we really only play in a 50-metre at RAC, I believe, but it's just, for swimmers it would really be helpful.
Okay, so when you go away for these tournaments, like how many teams can be accommodated? Say, for example, in a 50, if you've got a 50-metre pool, how many teams can you accommodate for a tournament?
Well, we would have 4 teams playing each other, 2 games on each 25-metre pool side of the.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
If there are no further questions, thank you very much for your submission. Oh, thank you. Yeah, Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of our previous submitters answered questions around how many players in a team and some of the grading that you have. But can I understand how many players play water polo in Palmerston North? Can I get an understanding of the participation numbers?
So we have a under-16 A team and under-16 B team. We also have potential of getting a C team if there's enough keen occupants. And we have a under-18 team, an under-14 team, and an under-12 team. And we also have senior men, sorry.
So is that under a boys' high ban, or was that all of players in Palmerston North? Can I understand?
No, there's other players at different schools. So I think we have a player at, so we also have our women's teams. So we have our senior women's, and we have under-16 girls, under-14 girls. And some of the under-14 girls, and under-16 girls, they all go to, not Palmy boys, they go to Palmy girls, Awatapu, the Fielding High.
Okay.
And yeah, that's what I believe. And we also have, with our under-14, some boys go to Pinnins because of that age group.
Yeah, cool. And you mentioned that you've gone to Wellington. I've heard in submissions that people are going there regularly, weekly, you've put, to Wellington, and there's about 30 of you that go to Wellington each week. Is that my understanding correct?
It depends on the week, to be honest, because sometimes, so tonight the boys are going down because it's a Thursday, so the under-16A boys are going down to play in under-18s because they're trying to get prepared for their nationals. So we had to, it depends on how big the teams are and what time the teams Wellington's trying to facilitate. So sometimes we'll have under-16 B team going down with the under-18As, and that's about 20 people going down at once. With our transport, we've only got, I think, 10 players that can fit in our coach's van.
Yeah.
And we've also got to get parents to go down at this point.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your submission, and the council will deliberate on the challenges of providing a polo pool, and one day you might make it to the Olympics. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors.
Before closing the session, I'd like to thank all the staff, the council staff, for guiding me through the session today, and the patience of councillors, especially those that got onto the actual question list but didn't get called upon. Thank you very much. The next session is session 6, which is from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. this evening, and look forward to seeing you all there. I'll now close the session. Thank you.